How's it going, guys? My name's Jeff. I'm part of the Arson Brothers Network and an Arson Brother here. And this is my new series, The Burning Page. Now, some of you may be wondering, what is The Burning Page? I'll tell you. I myself am a lover of reading. I love to read. I work at a bookstore. And I thought it would be really cool to start this new series where that I just kind of talk to you guys about the books that I've been reading and maybe get some conversations started in the comments. Maybe you guys can recommend me some stuff, and I can just kind of let you know what I've been thinking about, like I said, what I've been reading. Myself, I'm a big fan of fantasy, particularly dark fantasy, grimdark fantasy. Not necessarily only adult, I also do enjoy YA fantasy. Love horror and dark fiction. Some of my favorite authors are, of course, the god Stephen King. Also love Joe Hill, Neil Gaiman, Cormac McCarthy. A lot of that type of content is going to be on this show as well. But in this episode, I'm going to be talking about a few of the things that I've been reading recently. I had been in a bit of a reading slump. I'm kind of out of that now. So I finished up Neil Gaiman's Anansi Boys, which I'll be talking about. I actually read Caroline Kipnis' You, which is now a Netflix series. Some thoughts on that. And I'm about 85% finished, according to Goodreads, with Anna Smith Sparks' The Court of Broken Knives. And I definitely want to talk about that. Also, I'll show you guys some recent pickups, some stuff, some gifts that I've received. So sit back, pour yourself a cup of coffee, which I'm brewing now, and we're going to talk books. The first book that I want to talk about is Neil Gaiman's Anansi Boys. Now, I had recently over the summer read American Gods, and I loved it. That was something that I'd always wanted to read. Finally took the plunge and just fell in love with it. And I had bought the box set at my work, a Neil Gaiman box set, and Anansi Boys was included in that. And I found out that one of the characters, Mr. Nancy, or Anansi, was actually in this book as well. Now, it's not a sequel. It's not a prequel, I don't guess. But it does take place in the same universe with a same character, and I went into this not really knowing what to expect. I think I've heard some people compare it and say that it was what they would call urban fantasy or modern fantasy, because there's definitely fantasy tropes in this book, and but it definitely takes place in a modern setting. Really like this book. I found myself laughing out loud at certain parts of it, so the humor is definitely there. The characters you can't help but get into, and I'm not going to spoil anything. I'll just say the fact that you find out that Fat Charlie, who's your main protagonist, his brother shows up, his long lost brother, who is powerful. He's definitely a descendant of their father, Anansi, or Mr. Nancy, and he has lots of powers, and he starts accidentally or on purpose messing with Fat Charlie's life, and the situations that this leads to it's pretty fun, and but you actually do get into some real fantasy within this, and Neil Gaiman has just been such a revelation to me in the last year or so. He's rocketed up the list as one of my favorite authors, and I think this is a very good book that if you have read American Gods, definitely take the time. This is not as good as American Gods, but I mean, few things to me are. The American Gods is honestly one of my favorite books. So, but this was a very fun jump back into that world with one of those characters featured in overarching a very important role. Even though he's not in the book necessarily so much, his spirit lingers over the main characters completely. So definitely check out Anansi Boys. And what Neil Gaiman book should I read next? All right, the next book I want to talk about is You by Caroline Kipnis. I don't have it with me because a friend actually let me borrow it at work. I read this because I'd heard a lot of buzz about it, and I saw that the Netflix show was happening. And we've been selling a lot of this book at the store. And I thought it sounded interesting, and it was. I definitely want to say that as the main character works at a bookstore, and he's not a good person at all. He actually stalks the girl that he meets. As someone who works at a bookstore, that was a little interesting. I'm not sure that not sure how I felt about that, but also it was really interesting. I will say I want to give this book credit because the book was told from the perspective that you are the main character. Like it's wrote from that perspective, so it'll say, you see her walk in the store, you hear her say this, and being in the mind of someone who is a stalker, who has murderous and abusive tendencies, is very creepy, and I do appreciate that. There was this book, I did overall really like it. I had a few questions as far as like how he was getting away with some of this stuff, because he was breaking some big time rules that would have, I would think, got him caught. But there is a sequel to this book called Hidden Bodies, which my friend also let me borrow, and I'm going to check out. So maybe we'll find out how Joe Goldberg gets caught. But as it stands, I did enjoy this book. I found it creepy. I kind of felt like I knew where it was going towards the end. And maybe the ending felt a little predictable and a little cookie cutter. But my biggest thing that I will say positive about this book is that Caroline Kipnis found a way to really embody a creepy male, as she wrote from that perspective. And she didn't hold back. And when I say that, because this book is vulgar at times for some of you out there, she doesn't hold back on the language used or the thoughts. And just a real look into the male psyche in a way that you maybe wouldn't expect a female to go to. And I got to give her props on that. So, good book. I definitely want to read the sequel. I'll have more thoughts on that as it goes. But Caroline Kipnis is you. If you're a fan of thrillers and true crime stuff, even though it's not true, but it has that same vibe, definitely check it out. It was a quick read. I shot through it. And so, yeah, Caroline Kipnis is you. Overall, I enjoyed it. Coffee break. I don't have a tripod, so I'm actually doing this all selfie style or vlog style. So if that's why you see a shaky camera, that's why. But man, I got coffee out of a porg, so what have I really got to complain about? Now, feature review time, guys. I mentioned earlier that I love grimdark fantasy, and do I want to talk about this little nugget of doom and gloom that crept its way across my bookshelf. About a year ago, I picked this up at another bookstore. Sorry, but anyway, I support all bookstores. But regardless, this is Anna Smith Sparks' debut novel. It's book 1 in her Empires of Dust trilogy, and it's called The Court of Broken Knives. You can see her on the back here. It says, "All hail the Queen of Grimdark Fantasy," and this book is something else. Now, I had heard going into it that her writing style is one that you have to get used to, and it is. I would say, for some reason, it reminded me actually of kind of getting into the writing style of Cormac McCarthy, because she's very, and she herself, I've heard her describe it as this. She writes in a more poetic and lyrical style, but what this does is it finds a way to pull me in. Once I got into the groove of reading her, I fell right in, and it flows so well. I am shooting through this book. I've not got much left at all, but her style, because of the fact that it is more lyrical and poetic, like I said, it flows, and it really just makes me feel like I'm a part of everything that's going on. And these characters, I can't begin to stress enough that you have different protagonists, and all of them are deeply flawed people. Morally gray as grimdark will usually be. And the main character is Marith, who we find him within the first 12 pages. He ends up fighting and slaying a small dragon, and from there you find out many things about Marith and his bloodline and his past and why he is where he is. Don't want to spoil any of this, because I think everyone watching this should pick this book up and read it. But the shock changes that you see in this character as the book goes on and who he really is are just phenomenal. If you're a fan of fantasy, you're going to enjoy this. There are touches of magic that we see starting to. This world has magic in it. It's bloody. It is gruesome. It's everything that I look for out of a fantasy book, and I am completely pulled in. I can't wait to finish this and read book 2. Book 3 comes out this summer, so I'm definitely going to have book 2 read by then so I can read book 3 when it comes out. And Anna Smith Spark, definitely a strong new voice in the fantasy genre. Can't wait to see where she goes from here. And I urge you, if you read this book and you feel like that you're having a hard time getting into her writing style because it's a little different, just give it a little bit more room to breathe, and you're going to find yourself strolling right along with what I feel to be one of the better fantasy books I've encountered in a while. I absolutely love and hate that I love Marith. Not to mention there's also Tobias and Thalia. All these characters, like I said, you really have like 4 main protagonists, all of which are deeply flawed people. Tobias, Thalia, Orhan, and Marith, all for different reasons. You're going to find yourself rooting for them at times, rooting against them at times, but really just enjoying the ride that the story takes you on. Highly recommended. So definitely check out The Court of Broken Knives. Alright, for the final portion of the video, I actually just wanted to kind of show you guys some of the new things I've picked up recently. That was my cat. I'll try this again. Alright, for the last portion of this video, I just wanted to take a moment to show you guys some of my recent pickups, either through purchasing them or having them gifted to me. And we'll just go right through the stack here. First of all, Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. Now, the second book of this just recently came out. My friend Richard gifted this to me. Can't wait to read it. This is probably next on my to-be-read stack. Heard a lot of good things about it. Can't wait to let you guys know what I think. Also, picked up the Witcher box set from work. And this is the first 3 books in the Witcher series. You know the video games, I'm sure. Well, the books are actually, the video games are based on the books. It's not, the books are not an adaptation of the video games. I've heard so many good things. Looking forward to diving into that. Also, for Valentine's Day, my wife and daughter got me some Stephen King. They know how much I love Stephen King. There's a local used bookstore called The Hatter. They actually was able to pick up some prime King for me. Hardcovers, Rose Madder, Dolores Claiborne, and another one that I've heard so much about, Desperation. I was so stoked to get these, and I was really happy that they were able to find them. A couple of first editions in here, and for a King fan like myself, a constant reader, super excited. So that's just some of my recent pickups. This is all stuff that you're going to hear me talking about in coming episodes. And just want to thank all of you, not tank all of you, that would be bad. I want to thank all of you so much for taking the time to watch this. And in the comments, let me know, what have you been reading? What would you like for me to read? And what are your general thoughts on reading in 2019? What's some of your favorite genres? As always, be sure and give the Arson Brothers Network a subscribe. That way you can get more great content like this, as well as all of our other series here on the network. Be sure and check out our Etsy shop where you can get shirts, and you can actually purchase ways to view our wrestling promotion, our first episode that we did of that. So there's a lot of stuff going on here on the Arson Brothers Network. Once more, I want to thank all of you so much. And until next time, keep the coffee brewing and the pages turning or burning.